From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. At least 29 people have died after a car bomb exploded in a hotel in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. The death toll is likely to rise as a gun battle between soldiers and Al-Shabaab Islamist fighters continue to rage in a nearby building. According to the police, at least 80 people were injured in the attack. The location has been targeted by the Al-Shabaab group multiple times in the past, as it's favored by government officials.
While I was driving my auto rickshaw on this road, I saw many people fleeing, and the big blast occurred soon after that. I swear to Allah that I can express in words how anxious and shocked I was.
Our correspondent Matuba Matlaji has the latest development on this story.
Authorities in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, say the death toll from a gun battle between Al-Shabaab fighters and Somali soldiers will most likely rise. What we know now is that as many as 29 people have been killed from the gunfire that started on Thursday night and continuing into early hours of Friday morning. Militant group Al-Shabaab is said to have occupied a building after detonating another, which has resulted in many injuries. And we are hearing that hospitals in that city are battling to cope with the number of casualties from this latest attack by Al-Shabaab. The Somali army is yet to confirm if it has control of this situation and whether they've neutralized or will be able to neutralize Al-Shabaab fighters who have often breached security in Mogadishu and killing innocent people. The insurgency in that country has driven thousands and thousands of people out of the country. There's a large Somali community here in South Africa, and that is a result of the unrest and the tensions that continue in that country between the Somali soldiers and the Al-Shabaab militant fighters. And this latest attack will most likely see more Somali people flee their own countries. Back to you, studio.
That was Matuba Matlaji, our correspondent. And Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir and the newly appointed Prime Minister are set to form a new government. Prime Minister Mohamed Tahir Ayala said the new government will address local issues and ensure that emergency materials like food, fuel and medicine reach the people. Al-Bashir dissolved his government last week and declared a state of emergency all over the country after 2 months of protests. Venezuela has announced it will move the office of the state-owned oil company PDVSA from Lisbon to Moscow. The decision was announced by Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez after a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Rodriguez said Europe no longer provides the necessary guarantees to protect her country's assets. Venezuela is also set to sign a new trade deal with Russia that will focus on energy, agriculture and health.
President Nicolas Maduro has ordered that the offices of state-owned oil company PDVSA in Europe located in Lisbon be moved to Moscow. This is a way of strengthening our cooperation ties.
Russia will continue to assist the Venezuelan authorities in resolving social and economic problems, including through the provision of legitimate humanitarian aid. In general, we believe that the best way to help Venezuelans is to develop practical, pragmatic, and mutually beneficial interactions.
The United Nations Security Council has rejected a draft resolution on Venezuela presented by the United States. The result of the vote was 9 in favor, 3 against, and 3 abstentions. But it failed because 2 permanent members, Russia and China, presented their veto. South Africa also voted against the resolution. The U.S. resolution called for immediate presidential elections in Venezuela and unrestricted access for so-called aid. And a second vote took place on a motion called for peaceful political solution to the situation in Venezuela. The resolution also failed to pass, with 4 member states voting in favor, 7 against, and 4 abstaining. The draft resolution submitted by Russia backed the Montevideo mechanism to promote dialogue between the Bolivarian government and the opposition. The Venezuelan ambassador to the UN, Samuel Moncada, condemned what he calls a war against the Venezuelan people, prompted by US and its allies.
The United States and Europe are not a world government governing trade throughout the world. and these illegal acts are causing suffering for our people, this Security Council must ensure that we comply with international law and that we combat these weapons of mass destruction being employed by the United States and the United Kingdom. Wars are not just conducted with bombs. Wars are also conducted with banks, and banks are being used to conduct war against our people.
Moncada also said the United States and the United Kingdom robbed $30 billion of Venezuela's funds.
We also denounced the fact that these two colonial powers, one of them still very strong, another one in decline, in the course of not even 2 weeks, 1 week, carried out the biggest robbery of our country. More than $30 billion was stolen from the Venezuelan people. And they want to justify this theft. If they really are interested in the humanitarian situation and the well-being of the Venezuelan people, the first thing that they should do is return what they stole. The United States and the United Kingdom were involved in theft and plunder, which cannot be hidden under the cloak of humanitarian aid. It's the same as the covetous colonialism of 2 centuries ago, but today it's disguised with a salvation ideology of messianic salvation of those in the Third World. We don't need these saviors, Mr. President.
Still in the UN, the United States prevented Venezuela from chairing the presidency of the UN Council of Disarmament in Geneva. During the session, the Venezuelan delegation denounced the constant aggressions from the U.S. against its country and urged the Council to raise its voice against the threats prompted by the Donald Trump administration. The delegation has also insisted in the offer of dialogue made by the government of Nicolás Maduro.
Our delegation, as everyone here knows, has already participated in this forum with a peaceful and cooperative approach. We have never used to bring issues that are out of their agenda. We deplore, therefore, that the American delegation has brought matters of Venezuelan interest to this forum. Sultry has been the attitude of the government of Donald Trump and some of these satellite governments that have disrespected the most basic rules of diplomatic protocols.
Caribbean leaders will meet with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Washington to discuss the situation in Venezuela. It's part of CARICOM's mandate to continue dialogue with world leaders towards a peaceful resolution of the political issue. At the recently concluded CARICOM meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis, leaders maintained their non-interference and non-intervention policy.
To do so, we must harness.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister says his country is standing firmly behind its closest neighbor. He also described the United States' position on Venezuela as belligerent.
Trinidad and Tobago's position is intertwined with the CARICOM position, and that's whether it's Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada. We don't have a separate position. What we do have is a closeness, and we make no apologies, Trinidad and Tobago, for being on good terms with our neighbors, of which Venezuela is our closest neighbor. Venezuela is closer to Trinidad than is Scarborough, and we understand what that means. So we are not going to be encouraged onto anybody's bandwagon to our own detriment. And therefore, if there is to be any kind of intervention into the business of Venezuela, it ought to be through an agency which the world's countries have put in place for such circumstance. It is those who are preparing to disregard that is putting us at risk.
Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry has called on Latin American countries to reflect on the U.S. intentions in Venezuela. Our correspondent in Moscow, Hansel Oro, has more.
Russia connotes the failure of the plans of the U.S. to break into Venezuela with the so-called humanitarian aid, which was justified the military intervention of the Bolivarian nation. However, on this day, the spokesman of the Russian Chancellery, Maria Bayarov, to alert the countries of Latin America to be able to analyze this political crisis by which is going through Venezuela from the external pressures emanated by the USA and others, also self-denominated Group of Lima. On the other hand, It's necessary to attend the last information confirmed by the Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev, around these concentrations and the sending of special forces to Puerto Rico, but also the concentrations and increase of landings in Colombia. In this case, we must take reference that today might be Venezuela, but tomorrow might be countries of the domestic policy of the United States. It's also Cuba and Nicaragua and all of those governments that differ from the policy of the USA. Also, Russia calls to extend the dialogue between the opposition and the government of Nicolás Maduro.
That was Hans Eloro from Moscow, and we have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Human rights and social movements are denouncing increasing threats against environmental activists in Honduras. This comes after 2 indigenous leaders from the Tolupanes community were killed while defending their territory against a mining company. Other 12 activists have been detained, accused of provoking damages in another mining project.
In the community where I live, there is a Chilean company that wants to enter. We are resisting because the resources are ours. The water belongs to us, and the state is the violator of the rights. As Hondurans, the resources belong to us. They should rather reward people who defend the water and the forest.
And now environmental organizations are calling for national protests to reject the criminalization of these land defenders.
Outside the court of Tegucigalpa, family members of 12 environmental activists accompanied their loved ones, who are on trial for opposing the building of a mine on their lands.
They are accused of very bad crimes, because their only crime was defending our water source.
Besides criminalizing the activists from Guapinol, just a few days ago, 2 indigenous leaders were murdered in the north of the country, where opposition to mining is also prevalent.
We can see that the criminals are immune from prosecution in our country, especially when it's our criminal government. They order the killings of our friends, they repress our movements.
Environmental organizations are often taken aback by the killings and criminalization of activists. They have denounced a national emergency, in particular near regions where mining is taking place.
We want to support our friends. They are fighting an injustice. They are being criminalized for simply defending their water source.
My brother is Juan Antonio Lopez, one of those accused by the Los Pinares mining company, owned by the Facus family.
Social leaders are calling for national demonstrations to condemn the country's justice system. They say there have been no investigations into the killings and that environmental activists are usually persecuted. Activists want previous agreements to be respected, especially in indigenous areas.
Repression, criminalization, and persecution by international companies are out of control. The Honduran government is in their pockets. They are the ones calling the shots.
In less than 10 years, 140 environmental activists were killed in Honduras, and over 5,000 have been criminalized by state agencies.
The Mexican Congress has approved a project to put together a new National Guard. The National Guard will be made up by police members and military personnel under civilian control. The lower house ratified the changes the Senate made to the bill last week. The law now has to be approved by 17 out of the 32 Mexican states. And the Mexican Navy has chased down a boat that was transporting over 700 kilos of cocaine and other drugs. The boat was seized off the coast of the southern state of Chiapas. The area is a major trafficking route for South American cartels seeking to reach the United States. Now to Ecuador, the former president Rafael Correa has rejected the current president's allegations that he's orchestrating a political campaign against his administration. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, reports.
In a televised message, Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno denied accusations made against him and his family. He said he didn't push an empowerment in Spain and blamed the former President Rafael Correa for this smear campaign.
This is a strategy to undermine the country, conducted by former President Rafael Correa, who caused the biggest moral, economic and social debacle that Ecuador has ever experienced.
The member of the National Assembly who made the accusations against Moreno and his relatives in Ecuador and Spain took to social media to condemn acts of violence outside the hotel in Guayaquil, where he was going to hold a press briefing.
Unfortunately, people apparently close to the government, bad people, blocked my way into the hotel. And as you can see, they were carrying stones and had their faces covered. The police did nothing. They attacked the media. We hold the government responsible for my security.
Moreno's presidential message has provoked mixed reactions. For Vigilio Hernandez of the Citizen Revolution movement, Moreno seems to be worried and is looking for a way to distract the attention of the public.
The president didn't answer the accusations. That's the main thing. He looked nervous and isolated. This is important because we see there is a political vacuum around the president and a complete absence of answers.
For his part, Rafael Correa insists the country will know the truth about President Moreno, and a number of political and social movements are warning that demands to revoke his presidential mandate will increase. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
A new port terminal is opening in Costa Rica aimed at receiving larger ships crossing the expanded Panama Canal. The new port in the town of Limon will be able to receive vessels carrying up to 13,000 containers. This investment will likely turn Costa Rica into the Central American leader in port connectivity. The port cost about $1 billion and was built by a Dutch company. Liat, once the Caribbean's leading inter-island airlines, is now in serious financial difficulties and needs an emergency cash injection of $5 million to stay afloat. The airline only has enough cash to operate for just over a week and is now facing a possible shutdown if CARICOM does not intervene. Part of the airline's problems is that it was flying unprofitable routes. Liat will now explore the possibility of economic cooperation with Trinidad and Tobago's state-owned Caribbean Airlines.
The heads of government were informed that Liat is in serious financial difficulty, needing, within a matter of a fortnight, an injection of minimum $5 million in order to keep flying. Now, if Liat ceases to fly, I need not tell you the economic and other impact that that would have on the region. I have agreed to allow them to talk with CAL to see whether there is any economic benefit or possibilities for cooperation between CAL and Liat from that standpoint, purely from a business operations.
In Ecuador's Galapagos Islands, 155 young giant turtles bred in captivity have been released into the wild. The animals are part of an ecological program to repopulate the island of Santa Fe. According to the director of the Galapagos National Park, all the young turtles have a microchip to follow their growth. No tsunami warning was issued in Peru after a 7.1 magnitude earthquake hit the country on Friday morning. but the country continues to deal with heavy rains that experts say will last throughout March.
The southern region of Peru has been hit by heavy rains for more than a month. The rainy season has also hit the coast and the northern highlands, where the flow of the principal rivers has reached dangerous levels. In the Amazon region of Madre de Dios, more than 500 houses were flooded.
We can't even enter our land. We are really having a difficult time. We don't have water or rooms, and our houses are flooded. We are thinking about tonight to find a place anywhere.
Authorities have reported that more than 1,500 hectares of crops have also been affected or lost this rainy season. 19 bridges have collapsed and more than 150 kilometers of highway were damaged. This has also caused a food shortage in markets and the rising price of basic products.
The prices are up the roof. They've gone up and there are no products. All the lettuces are dry. This is because no trucks are coming through.
The fruit is expensive. It costed 4 or 5 soles per kilo, and now it is 6 soles, almost 50% more.
Experts say that this is only the beginning of a rainy season that will become even stronger during the first weeks of March.
We will have more heavy rains in the north and probably in the center, including in Lima. In the south, we don't need heavy rains for disasters. This region is very vulnerable, and relatively small amounts of rain already caused serious damages.
So far, the government has declared 25 emergency situations in 10 regions to bring assistance to the affected people and to rebuild all of the damaged public infrastructure.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Pakistan has partially reopened its airspace with India, allowing travel to 4 major cities. This ahead of the release of a captured Indian pilot. Pakistanis remain hopeful that these gestures will diffuse tensions between the two neighbors. Tensions have been escalating after a suicide car bomb attack killed at least 40 Indian soldiers in disputed Kashmir on February 14. Later, both countries claimed they shut down each other's planes, which ended in the capture of a pilot.
We want that. There should be no war and peace prevail. But India shouldn't think Pakistan is weak. If we lose patience, we will destroy India. It shouldn't think it can attack Pakistan anytime. Pakistan army does not lack strength.
And these tensions have left hundreds of Pakistani passengers stranded at the border railway station of Atari on the Indian side. The Samjauta Express rail service was suspended by Pakistani authorities, which runs between the two countries. And a group of Indian citizens have gathered at the border to welcome the downed pilot, who they consider a national hero. Pakistani authorities promised to release a captured pilot this Friday as a peace gesture after days of tensions.
We have been waiting here since 4:30 a.m. At first, we were told that he would be released at 5, but now the time has been pushed to 10. We will stand here until midnight if we have to. We will stand here the whole night. He is our hero.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has urged India and Pakistan to avoid any increase of tensions. Guterres expressed deep concern about the situation and offered mediation in the conflict if both sides agreed. He also called for urgent measures to reduce tensions and maintain peace and stability in the region. North Korea has denied the claims by U.S. President Donald Trump that Kim Jong-un demanded all sanctions to be lifted during their summit in Vietnam. North Korea's foreign minister said Kim only asked for a partial sanction relief in exchange for dismantling their main nuclear facility. The foreign minister said they also offered to permanently halt nuclear and long-range rocket testing. Meanwhile, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has assured that his country will cooperate with the United States and North Korea to help facilitate the stranded talks. This in order to reach an agreement on denuclearization.
I believe that this is part of the process that will lead to a further agreement. Now, our role has become more important. The South Korean government will closely communicate and cooperate with the United States and North Korea so as to help their talks reach a complete settlement by any means.
Belgium's government is determined to bring back Islamic State group children from Syria despite a court ruling. An appeals court in Belgium ruled that the government isn't obliged to repatriate 2 women and their 6 children from Syria. However, the government argues that the children can't be guilty of acts committed by their parents. The mothers were convicted last year in absentia of being members of the Islamic State group. We come to the end of this news brief, but as you know, these and many other stories, you can read them from our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.